there's no changing name, or there's no
Got it. Yeah. I just
no
started recording. Yeah. Go ahead, Steve. Yeah.
right. This is the Nephew SIG Release Meeting for November 13th, 2023. Okay. So announcement. Obviously everyone for SIG Release to mailing list would have known by now that Bala and Rado are elected to be the new SIG3 chairs and vice chairs. So congratulations.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you for everything, all your guidance, leadership. And then we hope to continue this. Obviously, Rado is a big part of that. And then we obviously please continue to be here and guide us.
I welcome our new overlords and will happily do their bidding in the service of release.
Yeah.
So I don't know when exactly that term is supposed to start, but then it could be now if you want to. You can go ahead and anyway, the agenda item out. Sorry for that.
The wiki says that it's the election period is until the 17th.
17th, really? Just last one then.
Yeah, sorry, Stephen, you're on the hook. You have to do your
I know.
job.
Let me check out what the agenda is. And there isn't any. so as usual, go ahead, Bala. You can go ahead and take over, because usual you just want to get an update.
Yeah. So we are making progress overall. Probably we can go through the release items in the board in a bit. But overall, from the release perspective, I'm slightly getting a bit concerned now, to be honest with you, even with the December 15th date, because last time in the SIG automation, I spoke to Joseph, and Sagar was not there. I think that maybe Joseph was definitely there. He wanted the APIs to be approved very soon and merged. The API, the two PRs that are 56 and 57, I've not seen it this week. What's the status of that? But there was still many comments that he was trying to address, Sagar. So I think then they wanted to have a meeting with Wim as well. Wim is on the travel. He's on the road, obviously. So I don't know whether they got a chance. I'm gonna put that note in the SIG automation chat today after this meeting. That they were able to meet, or so there were some few dependencies. So but Wim had told that he wanted some wish list. Then he said that he agreed that probably we should not be doing that because it's going to take much more work. So we are going to strike a middle ground. So if the APIs, those PRs are merged this week, I think probably we have a chance of hitting our dates.
From my side, the weekend I look at was it Varesh? The patch for the 3.5GC is quite far from something that could be approved.
Okay.
Yeah, Vamshi actually. Yeah, and I would, yeah, I would imagine I probably need a session with him just to get it to the right direction again.
Okay.
Meeting with Ronak, earlier, and we were under impressions. Wim and I both did, and then we were under impressions that they had an understanding, but then the code was quite different, and the code doesn't work for sure. So I'm pretty sure that test wasn't run to ensure that the functionality was still working. So there's certain things that I have to sync up with him for sure.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, there is that too. I think overall, and the next week is Thanksgiving for us who are in the US. obviously, I mean, in addition to the regular 2 days off, some of us will take maybe the whole week off. So I think, yeah, I think that is there too. Overall, probably in the SIG automation meeting by day after tomorrow, we can
Yeah,
discuss.
actually, I will take the whole week off. But then
You'll take
again, officially you'll be the chair next week, so you can still hold the meeting if you want to on Monday.
But there is a chance I may take two. That's the thing. There is a chance that it's not yet decided, but obviously will Rado is there if
Yeah, I'll be working, so no worries.
yeah. So there is no Thanksgiving in Poland, I think.
No.
Cool. Sorry, buddy. Just yeah. So that is that. And the other aspect I want to discuss is probably I'm gonna add one more work item to to GitHub today. So when this whole OAI RAN course started, there was an architecture diagram that was approved, in terms of deployment. How many clusters were there, where, what is deployed where, like regional clusters, far edge, edge. The nomenclatures are different, obviously, in the diagram. I'm not saying, but where the RAN is deployed, where the UE is deployed, where the CU user plane is deployed, and the control plane is deployed. There was a architecture diagram. So Rado, what we need to do is probably I'll create a issue on that. Probably we need to work together with Victor to realize that in our test infra, to create that kind of an infrastructure to test OAI, RAN, and core when they are ready. So that is
Sure.
something we need to do, Rado.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think probably this it may require some tweaking the scripts or tweaking the creation of additional clusters or networking. Probably I think yeah, that's what we need to do. Probably we have to sync up with Victor and Vish on that one. Yeah. So that is one additional item we are gonna add for the end-to-end testing thing. Probably we can make some parallel progress there in addition to when the actual development is going on. So those are some of those. Those are in summary. That's the status, Stephen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I too don't think we are in that good of a shape.
Yeah.
Given that we did all this to try to preserve 3 or 4 weeks for integration testing.
Yes.
Obviously, that would basically means that code complete by Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen a lot of patches coming in actually for a lot of stuff. So yeah, this is looking very risky.
Yes, I think we'll raise this again in our Wednesday meeting, and then probably we have whatever call that we need to take, we'll take at that point of time.
Yeah. So it's end-to-end tests. Is that fully automated now? I guess that's the question either to Rado or Victor.
Yeah, Rado.
So end-to-end tests are running periodically every day.
Okay,
and
that's good.
For the PR end-to-end testing, I will be pushing these changes shortly, probably tomorrow. And for code coverage testing and reporting, one of the PRs is already out. I just pushed it like an hour ago. Once this gets merged, the image gets produced, I will create PRs for the repositories that it will be run on. It will be in the local configuration. So those are basically the two things that are left on my roster.
Okay, because that end-to-end test itself will probably change a little bit for L2. Obviously, we have to integrate the OAI pieces, and then the entrance point may actually be NF topology now. So I would really like to see that happening at some point, early December for sure. So we can sync that in. Whether or not we'll make that part of the automations, or whether or not this is like end-to-end for R2, and then making sure that we can manually run it first before make it a periodic sanity check or golden test. Yeah, probably we will take some time before we get there. But that part, yeah, the interval test is the periodic test is probably what I had in mind too, because we don't every pre-submit triggering at this point of our development would probably not be feasible.
So regarding
I
the
hope it's not the case because if we have a lot of patches coming in, that'll be great. But so far it's still just a few, as you can see from the file host, I guess, channel.
sorry, so regarding the OAI integration, so the idea is to have another additional end-to-end test, or we're going to just replace the existing one and have a mix between 3.5G and OAI.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I was wondering about that, where Vim is on this, because obviously the instantiations of the nodes and everything, I actually don't know enough about AI to see whether or not there's a major difference between the two.
So the way I understand is, my understanding is they're separate, Victor. So we are not going to mix free 5GC with OA at all, because that's always a stretch goal. I don't think that is going to be part of, for example, we are not going to take free 5GC core and then ran from OA. That is out of the scope at this point of time, because that was a stretch goal.
No. So we never want them to interoperate, but then I thought we'll be able to do one single deployment where there's a mix between the two, while they're not. You're making two separate calls on two different infrastructures. So that's the testing of able to support two different vendors.
Got it.
With different initialization and things like this. So I think even that, to be honest, is a little iffy right now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point of time, I wish I'll give you the floor in a minute. Victor, I would suggest, I'm glad you're on the call. I was looking for you in the call, then I found you here. So at this point of time, I think probably whatever the best and the easiest way to accomplish this, I would say if it makes sense for us to make two to separate end-to-end test, two separate deployments to achieve both things, let's go with that.
Yeah.
That looks the least risky at this point.
That most likely will be what it will be.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Go ahead, Vish. Sorry.
No. I just wanted to make sure I understood or the end-to-end test, right?
Yeah.
At least the end-to-end test at this point of time was specific to our sandbox and to free 5GC, which means at some point of time, our end-to-end test needs to also be split up, even though we call it end-to-end test, but there is the piece which is very core to Nefio, which means free 5GC is not core to Nefio at this point of time, even though it might be packaged. If somebody might decide not to take free 5GC, right, it's just a reference implementation to show how it is done. So there are certain pieces of a Nefio core which we still need to run some sort of tests on, in the sandbox, and then the free 5GC becomes another scenario testing, basically, or end-to-end testing. Right. So, which means we probably also need to have, since Nefio as a solution is what I think of, whatever we are trying to do with the RAN thing also is another scenario end-to-end test. I don't know if I'm mixing up a lot of words here. That's the way I think. I could be wrong, but this is how at least I was thinking in my head. If somebody,
so if we have a infrastructure to support this, then let's say for argument's sake, OAI has different set of kernel modules and things that they have to instantiate. That, compared to free 5GC, then we should have. So as Bala said, most likely we don't have the Nefio code infrastructure to be able to switch the two, because actually right now those instantiation happens as part of Ansible scripts.
Yep.
They're not like Nefio instantiating a node or install all that software before you can get the node prepared to deploy the workload. So basically it's more like a SIG work. So they're two separate test sandbox.
Yes, two separate, exactly. And then we need, like I said, we need a separate one for the core, because somebody having a distribution would not want to actually carry anything about free 5GC or the OAI. They just want the system components. So
that's what it is. So most likely, the most likely scenario is we have two end-to-end.
Yes, two separate VMs. Yes.
And each VMs are different Ansible scripts to load whatever is needed for that particular workload. And then we'll run the URAN sim the same way. I mean, the hope is the OAI has the RAN pieces where you don't even need a URAN sim, but even that probably is most likely not going to happen. we'll
Because
see.
I know Victor has been hardening up the end-to-end test with some assertions and all that stuff, right? So
that would be nice. That's actually what we set up to say, hey, R2, we should at least have that. But obviously right now and in November 13th, that seems highly unlikely.
yeah. So one other thing, Victor, maybe we need to discuss also, like, which part of it can be like separated, the current end-to-end test. I don't know how many of you agree that, it should be like two separate end-to-end tests. One is like, just the core end-to-end test, and then the 5G. When I say core, I'm talking about Nefio core, not the 5G core, free 5GC core. So we need to probably split those two. That way it can be separate on its own, irrespective of whatever workloads come later.
Yeah, that's right. Like we have to start thinking like what we can reuse and what we can.
Yes. Hey, interestingly, I saw while at the summit, Steve, there were some poster when I came to the Google campus. There was some things about like, how I think Google probably encourages using something like a programming language instead of using Bash. Is it something that you have observed too?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was something like Go Bash. Is there something called as Go Bash?
Like in the restroom or something?
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know. Yeah, there might be something internal, but then because I'm on open source team, I don't use the Google code infrastructure as much. So
it's worth mentioning. I asked about this in the past. We use quite a lot of makefiles. I find them very hard to manage and use. I've asked in the past if maybe we should just have a set of bash scripts to do everything. At this point, we have lots of different tools. We use makefiles, we use Ansible, and I don't know. This is my own personal preference that I find just a simple programming language, which Bash is, easier to maintain in the code base. But
so you're going against what is you're taking a different approach where Bash is not encouraged. Okay.
I'm with you on this one. Makefiles are basically, like a weird shell script with, some
very weird. Yeah, it's a weird
questionable syntax choices. So yeah.
It's also the wrong tool for doing these things, in my opinion. Makefiles were strongly optimized for compiling C programs.
Yes.
I think that they do pretty well. But even with that, there's like so much better ways to compile C. I'm a big favorite of Ninja and Mason or others for doing that kind of work. But we're not compiling any C code. There's absolutely no advantage of using Go with makefiles. Go is extremely straightforward in terms of compilation. It's really just a single command line. But yeah, exactly. We use makefiles for publishing Docker images and things like that. But makefiles are designed for seeing changes to files and just only optimizing and doing tasks that need to be done. For example, compiling or linking. Don't do that again if you've already done it. Things like that. It's really not helpful for us. But it kind of goes back to, in a lot of ways, we've used Cube Builder as is. So whatever Cube Builder creates, we just kind of accept its opinions in terms of both the makefile, the testing frameworks, etc. I'm not sure it always serves us best, right? But it's a big discussion, and creating a whole development framework with CI/CD and testing and everything. It's something that every project needs to do according to what's best for it. And I'm happy to see that we've generally been open as a group to trying other tools and doing different things that work well for us and using meritocracy, right? We moved to using Prow, for example, after examining it carefully to see if it's the right tool for us. And we were convinced that it is, and it's been great. I think it's been absolutely wonderful for moving us forward. So yeah, maybe at some point we can look at makefiles too and think about doing them differently. Anyway, it's a bit of a distraction from the topic, but since Vish mentioned,
we use make big well for operator side because builder for sure. It's just
I think the key takeaway from that particular whatever I saw was shell scripts are not great for unit testing is what I took away, which was probably, I think you Googlers are being recommended on, seems like, right?
Yeah, well, Google is a big company, right? And
Also
but
not
many
portable,
different
right?
parts.
Not a unit test, not also not portable.
But I will say regarding unit testing, I mean, even that is something I would like to examine more closely. What exactly is the unit, right? I think a lot of people understand unit testing as testing a function or testing a class.
Yeah.
They're very kind of oriented around the programmatic architecture, right? But it's not always beneficial. There's always trade-offs with testing frameworks. Like unit testing, people talk about 100% coverage. Every single function has to have a test associated with it. We've probably all worked in projects like that. There is so much inertia with that. People are afraid to change a single line of code because it means they also have to write the test. I'm not even talking about TDD, right? Which is like an extreme version of it that I'm happy that we're not embracing. But yeah, tests have a cost. Maybe I'll share a presentation given by Rich Hickey, a programmer that I quite admire. He's the inventor of the Clojure language. And he's very opposed to unit testing. He has an extreme position on the other side where he says that they never help. What you need to do only is the pragmatic testing of the program. Is the program working in the ways that you expect it to work? And yeah, you can test for very specific aspects of it, right? He's not saying don't test. But the unit and unit testing has to be thought of very carefully, right? What are you testing and for what purpose?
Correct. I think a combination of unit test, integration test, and functional test over my periods a period of my time, where I was like thinking tests are not required, as a programmer. Like I thought, I write code, you will not find any bugs. That was my attitude until I find out that after 6 months, I couldn't even figure out what I wrote in my code. Maybe it's me. And then I use unit and the integration code basically for, they're also good documentation for me in the sense. And also if I make a change, I know I have a defense there that will catch my issues. That is how I think of it. It helps me like do something and move on to other projects. Otherwise I'll be stuck with that project is the way I see. That is me thinking that way. But yeah, there are multiple approaches out there. We have this test-driven development with Go being a lot of things there, and also behavior frameworks, BDD frameworks. Yeah, as long as we are able to contribute and we are not actually causing any breakages or we are afraid to make code changes, if there are tools in place to help with that, for new folks to come in, those should be available, is what I feel.
The worst thing we can do with testing is create an obstacle for development, right? If you've reached that point, then you failed with your testing strategy. And by the way, we're not doing any penetration testing right now, which is something I'm strongly in favor of. But yeah, SIG security, I'm excited about that we can start thinking of poking holes and seeing not just breakage, but security gaps in our code, right?
That's where I like Go language, man. I think when they written it, they had GoSec, the utility, it can actually figure out, you can run GoSec and you'll be able to get some analysis. But for that, you also need to have some good integration tests written, integration and for end-to-end tests written.
Absolutely,
for GoSec to work effectively, to find issues.
Go also has, since Go 1.20, has automatic fuzzing, which is excellent. It's a good way to test functions very quickly with the random inputs. And yeah, it's also a tool that I find very useful for in Go specifically. But at the end of the day, as you said, it's our end-to-end testing that's very important, which is why we talked about it last time. I think it was in the SIG2 meeting, where we talked about making it easier to set up a development environment with kind clusters, etc., where you can take your code and very, very quickly and easily show it running, right? Logging is a very important strategy, right?
Yes.
And we're very bad at it right now.
But Tal, I'm sold on the test pyramid though. I'm fine with all the three, in a sense, at each being, appropriate is what I feel. Like, that's probably what Bala had shared from the Martin Fowler thing. I think, was that from Martin Fowler, Bala, that you shared?
Yes.
Yeah. By the way, regarding logging, Go has a problem that exists in many languages. In Java, it's a big problem where so many different libraries use different logging frameworks, right? So you end up you look at logs and it's a huge mix of styles and configuration, and it's painful. And it's the reality of when you're using you're importing different libraries, and every library chose a different logging framework, right?
Yeah, I think for a long time, the SIRPs and LogRS seems to be more popular. I mean, I've been doing Go programming since 2018, on and off.
So in the Kubernetes world, they adapted Klog, which is a fork of glog that they forked specifically for the Kubernetes project, and it's a very bare bones logging system. But I just shared a link with you in the chat. So I created a library called Common Log, which I'm exactly solving this issue, or trying to solve, I think successfully, the issue of multiple logging systems. So if in the Java world, you might be familiar with VNCJ, what was it called? SLFJ. Which was a project that, what?
SLF4j is a wrapper on top of Log4j.
Yeah, well, it's not just a wrapper. It's a single API that wraps many logging backends, but it also includes syncs for other libraries. So basically, you can funnel all your different logging libraries into one place, and then choose a different backend, and they'll all use the same backend. So I created the same thing for Go. It's called Common Log. I use it in a lot of my projects, and it does exactly that. So if I use, say, three, libraries that use three different logging libraries, they go back. I can choose my backend and actually change it programmatically. So, yeah, I will say that Go did improve things in the recent 1.21 release, and introduces a new internal logging library called slog, which is structured logging. And one of the very important things they did with slog, I think, is that the logger itself is an interface rather than a struct. This gets very technical, but it means that you can much more easily replace your loggers with your own implementation of loggers that would do other things, right? So it's very easy to create log syncs. Anyway, all of that is included in my project. It supports all of these, and a lot of kind of popular logging libraries that are out there. I hope to make it grow, because unfortunately there are so many.
Yeah, it's all about coming up to speed, right? There's so many options, so many things out there, and we have to get the work done too. And we have to deliver.
Yeah, so we actually do structured logging in some cases in our code, but we don't have a strategy. Everybody seems to do whatever they want and choose different log levels, and the end result is that our logs are not extremely useful, right?
Tal, please present it in one of our meetings. Probably.
I absolutely, yeah. I actually have a whole bunch of presentations I want to do here and in SIG 2 and in SIG 1 for ideas that I have, but I'm constantly struggling with this, with our crunch, right? We had it with R1, we have it again now with R2, where we're just racing to meet the deadline, and we kind of don't want to distract the work with conversations that seem less critical right now, right? It's not healthy, right? I've said it many times, where this is not a good way to work. I think we're all suffering from it, frustration and crunch and inability to really think about things properly, because we just are racing to implement.
So correct. That's why it's important at some point of time. I know, Tal, even I'm guilty. You actually had started off with that retrospective. I was going to put some comments, and then I forgot about it.
Yeah,
actually, we did run the retrospective meeting. It's captured actually. In the same document that Tal started.
Is it okay? Because some of the things are, we need to actually recognize that there are folks with different experience levels, right? In terms, you may be professionally have a 20-year experience, that's fine, but in certain domains or in certain areas, and even things like, I felt that we are all thinking that we are doing a 60-hour or 70-hour week is what we are assuming that we are all working on, which is a very bad assumption if we did that. you know.
Yeah.
So those kind of things, at least we need to document and we need to highlight, and this data can be taken and then said that, look, which means we need to go to these participating companies and get more resources, right? And for example, if you're saying that, you know, some of the PR are actually getting reviewed only once and getting merged, we need to call those out, and, you know, we need to track those kind of things. So those kind of behaviors will accumulate, and, you know, it will lead us in a very bad situation. That's my at least my past experience. I could be wrong, but
I agree 100%.
Yeah,
I
I think,
agree.
yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to bring. So before that, so Victor, Victor, do we still have Victor, or did he drop off?
Victor drop off, I think.
Okay, Victor dropped off. So
Yeah.
okay, so probably that, I think probably we need to work with Victor on that one, the test setup stuff. Probably that is very important, I think. I'll raise a GitHub issue, and then we will I will tag all of us there, and probably we should start thinking about those clients. Probably we can also ping Joseph to pitch in his inputs there. My idea is rather that when they are Joseph and Sagar and Wim, they are trying to finalize the PR, the APIs, we can come up with this reference architecture from the testing perspective. So that is that. So Stephen, one more thing, actually, I just wanted to bring it here. I just put one link in the chat. I suggested this as a template for the SIG1 to produce the requirements for going forward.
Yeah.
So I just presented
So
that.
you presented in the last meeting, I'm guessing.
Yeah, presented in the last meeting, yeah. So I just wanted to, in case anybody missing was in that meeting, I just put it here. So I just mentioned about, you know, like think in terms of features, personas, stakeholders, requirements, what's in scope, what's
Yeah,
not.
I wish there's someone in SIG1 that is more or less playing the role of a product manager.
Yeah, that's
I
exactly the
actually-
words. Yeah, that's exactly the words I put in here in my document. So they were in principle in agreement with that. So I'll create a GitHub template for this, for creating features requests from the SIG1, and then we will create from the SIG2 perspective, we'll create epics and issues in GitHub. Then we will correlate these epics these epics realize this particular feature requested by SIG1. So we're gonna do that correlation and see the progress, and they'll all be connected at this point of time. So,
Right.
that's
That's a good thing to do, for sure. So hopefully Sana is still the chair, but whoever the vice chair or someone is going to put some structure into what SIG1 is delivering.
Yeah, that's I just wanted to bring the highlight here, because SIG3 is also in
Yeah. So now that you're chair, so one responsibility, of course, if we have clear-cut requirements and then commit those into a release, then SIG3 is supposed to reject things that are not supposed to be. It's not part of there, and two, you know, we'll be monitoring to see whether or not we'll be descoping, and see how, you know, as time progresses. I don't think we'll be adding stuff. Most likely we'll be stripping for release cycle. So
we can always add stuff in the backlog, but doesn't need to get picked up for the release. Yeah.
No, not adding stuff into the release.
Adding stuff to the release. That's why I was asking about, like, you know, when we're doing the retrospectives, like, hey, are we going to have the same R1BF for R2 do? You know, because there's always something out there. People are expecting some release out there with some features coming in, but we need to probably set the expectations properly.
Okay.
Cool. So that is that. Rado, any inputs from you in general, or anything that you want to share with the wider team?
Well, speaking of security, we're already running the GoSec as a vetting of PRs flow, and additionally there is a Trivy and Gripe running on Docker images to create reports. Those are not public. I'm just thinking of a good way to put them somewhere. But those are only running for the release images. And speaking of images, I've taken Tal's suggestion to rename the images to add like prefix saying like what kind of images are those. So those created from the PRs will be named differently, and are those which are part of like end-to-end pre-merge testing will be named differently. So they will be distinguishable in a Docker Hub. And yeah, what else I was gonna say? Oh yeah, I started looking into something called UBI from Red Hat, that's Universal Base Image. And one project here in company is actually looking into them because they are requested, seems to be pretty often for some certifications based on the Red Hat images.
That's right, Rado. Yeah.
And yeah, I've just started looking into if it will be possible to use them as our base image, but that's just a side project, I guess. So yeah, Raul, you got your hands.
Yeah. So some observations, and please correct me in some cases because I don't have a deeper understanding of some of the repos here. So one thing that I see in general is that almost all the projects repos, none of them have GitHub Actions, right? Like GitHub Actions workflows. All of them are using Prow, and one of the things that I keep wondering is that a lot of workflows, a lot of actions, a lot of marketplace actions already exist for some of these toolings that we're talking of. So what is the general consensus among us, the team members here? Like, is it okay to make use of workflows, GitHub action workflows, if there already exists a predefined action to fulfill some of the use case?
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with this.
Okay.
The thing is, like, we've started with Prow and we based basically everything what we're doing on it. But I mean, it shouldn't be a limiting factor,
Okay.
So if there's I'm sorry, got a bit cold here. So if there's a better solution to do something based on GitHub Actions, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
I'm just not sure about like what's the finance part of it. They for sure there is some limited available for like open source projects, but I'm not really sure about the capacity. Like if you can, like to what extent you can use them in our case specifically.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting point that you bring up. At least, but for CNCF projects, all the open source GitHub repos have unlimited capacity. In fact, in some cases, there is Equinox, which even gives you GitHub runners to run on their bare metals if you want it for testing purpose or things like that, including ARM and x86 runners. We are using it for one of the other projects, but I'm not sure about Elephant, if GitHub Actions.
Those are for sure the paid option. I don't think the bare metal provisioning is in the free tier of them. But I might be wrong. Not really.
Yeah, we don't know yet. Actually, I think there's still like the budgetary things that TSC is trying to work out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in some cases,
unlimited compute resources to use. Well, I have no idea.
So one question. Thanks, Rahul, for bringing that up about GitHub Actions. So Rado, I'm not technically that well versed in this area. So how well do they interplay together, Pro and GitHub Actions? Are they complementary, or they are mutually exclusive on certain things? Can we use them for horses for courses? For example, take the tool whatever is the best for a particular task. What do you think?
Well, probably I can
Yeah,
answer
sorry,
part of the
go
question.
ahead.
Yeah, I think that you make a very, very good question because at this point, I haven't seen any project which are using both projects, Pro and GitHub Actions. So to be honest, yeah, I don't know. And I'm not sure what is going to be the result. Like probably because at the end, both tools are reporting back in the GitHub checks, so you can see which things are passing. But when you add Pro to the formula, yeah, to be honest, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that is my concern for using actions. If they are complementary, if they can play well together, then absolutely, I think. And then if you have all the logistics figured out from the LFN perspective in terms of the usage, I do not want us to limit with any particular tool, but
the outcome of GitHub Actions
exactly.
flow, whatever is executed there, we can pull to Prow through the API calls to GitHub. So the information between them can be interchangeable. That's not a problem. My two concerns with GitHub Actions is this. The first one, I was already saying, the financial part of it and the extent which we can use them. And the other thing is, it will need, I guess, at least some basic security check process, because those are submitted to GitHub Marketplace just basically by anyone. So it's like with the external libraries or whatever. Like, you're really never 100% sure if they are not provided by, let's say, your the packaging infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So what's in it? If somebody gets this developer account and switches this GitHub action to do something malicious and stuff like this, and we have like our set of scripts and stuff for Prow committed to. The whole configuration is basically committed to GitHub, right? So it's pretty easily auditable to check what's going on there. So those are my two I guess concerns with those.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Rado. Rahul, go ahead, please.
Hey, so 2 points, right? One is on the complementary aspect perspective and on the security aspect perspective. Like, from the security aspect perspective, what I see is that in general, any workflow tool, right, will have security concerns. If it's executing something which is taking it from the repo, any Git repo, and then executing, we will have security concerns. That's a security concern that are widely understood in the context of GitHub action workflows. I believe that should be true even for Prow. But one thing that I wanted to point out is that, especially in the context of some of the GitHub marketplace actions, right? Some of the matured actions, there is some handling of security concerns. For example, like we were looking into OpenSSF scorecard, right? Like, how do you automate getting that score and badge? And there already exists workflow from OSSF. Which ensures that you can only allow read permissions to the Git repo. So some of those actions are automatically taken care of as part of GitHub Actions workflow itself. And the other part is the GitHub Actions workflow so natively integrates with the secrets and the action secrets, right? Like, I don't know how secrets are handled today. Like, if a token has to be allocated for an action to execute, how are those taken into consideration? I believe we haven't used any, I don't know, basically, have we used any workflow which requires a secret to be configured at an organization or a repo level? I think we might have.
Absolutely. Those are kept as a Kubernetes secrets in Kubernetes instance that our Prow is running, and they are mounted per job when they are required. Somewhere on my roster is to actually migrate them to some kind of secret store, like HashiCorp Vault or stuff like this, or this. Maybe we can just use this one provided by Google, since we're using this environment anyway, and mount them in Kubernetes and then mount them as a secrets to job pods.
No, but eventually, whatever we do, right? Like, even if we use secrets for, even if we use vaults for secrets management, eventually there is some authentication or authorization that would be needed, which will be provided from the workflow, right? Like, how do we handle that? Like, even for checking whether vault access is okay. So today my assumption is that the provisioning into the Kubernetes secrets is done as part of the repo itself. But tomorrow, if we have to execute an action and that action requires access to a secret, that has to be configured through a GitHub repo only, right? There has to be some prow action which is currently been made use of, which requires access to such kind of secret, right? Like for example, let's say when we push the Docker image today, we are making use of, we must be making use of some secret, right? Like kept.
The Docker Hub access.
Correct. Okay. So the other aspect was, what kind of cost will be involved. I feel, for running these basic checks, right, like basic marketplace actions, or for all the open source projects, the GitHub Actions is free. But let's say, for example, tomorrow Microsoft decides and starts charging for it, right? Like, whatever happens. So in that case, we'll have to jump to GitHub Actions, GitHub runners, right? Like, I believe we are executing prow on our own instances today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So we are doing some management of those prow instances anyways. Okay. And the other idea about using, so you mentioned, Rado, about using Trivia and Gripe, right, for scanning purpose. So is it possible to have a common action which can be easily instantiated across all the GitHub repos within an organization? For example, tomorrow, if someone creates a new repo, a new project repo, and now that project repo again has to, go through the same process of integrating with same Trivia, Gripe, and things like that. Rather than that, there should be, is it possible to have a high level, action which says that this particular repo has to execute, all the repos have to execute by default all these actions, and certain repos can have certain exceptions. So that kind of mechanism.
Yeah, that's this is a part of building the image, which is then transferred to Docker Hub. So whichever repository will create the Docker image, it will basically have to go through this process.
Okay. So it has to be on per project basis, right, today?
Yes.
Right.
So I mentioned this in the past, but I think there's value to having a local Docker registry, right, for dev work, but possibly also with our GitHub Actions to have our own repository, right? Obviously, we can use Docker Hub or Quay.io or any other public repository, but it involves creating users for that, right? And storing the certificates and keys, and then we'll have to manage those if we want, a separate set for the testing. Setting up a repository is actually very, very easy, right? There's the very default simple repository that comes with Docker, but there are a whole bunch of open source projects for deploying repositories that are very lightweight and easy to use, I think. It might be worth thinking about that. Yeah, go ahead, Rado.
If that's needed, I can set up something if it will help you guys with the development process. There's a GCR. We, I guess, don't have the unlimited resources on our Google Cloud project, but yeah. I guess it will handle the repository. So I also have on my roster task to think about mirroring what we have on Docker Hub, because like it might go down or something. So to have two sets of images in a different localization. So yeah, I can look for into this. So
yeah, I think it's worth looking into. For me, the highest priority is the development environment, setting it up. And for that, I think just like we set up Gitea and Kind, we should set up a local repository and just have it immediately work, right? So people can work on their laptop, or as Bala calls it, a Mac. He's very in favor of that, but that you can just run it locally and not really have to depend on anything, any kind of service, other than, of course, importing libraries from external repositories. But really that you can have a complete development environment locally and not have to worry about things, especially when you want to experiment and do other things. You're starting to push all these Docker images to Docker Hub. yeah. Anyway.
About that, years ago, I was doing some work for like a startup aggregator thing in Berlin. They had a pretty nice thing for development environment. So there was like official Vagrant image that had the same libraries version. It was a mess. It was PHP, so like whatever. But so every development environment was the same because the whole process was like the first task in the work for like no new person was to download Vagrant and import this image, and everybody had the same sets of libraries in the same versions and so on. So maybe something like this. Victor did an awesome job with a Vagrant file here to spin up the instance for end-to-end testing, giving you the option to use like VirtualBox and Google Cloud as a backend, and I believe one more as well. So anyways, maybe something like this would be also a beneficial, like an official development environment packaged in it. It might be something different, not only Vagrant, but I guess that's the easiest one to start with.
Yeah, that sounds great, because we would be able to have the same tooling for both local dev and for integration tests, right? So it would deploy whatever it needs to deploy.
Yeah, and we can basically force everyone to use Emacs.
That's not happening.
If that happens, I'm going to fork Nefia into a VI Nefia.
Oh, but joking aside, it can be beneficial to have something to spin up and do some tests there and break stuff. Just not worry about like your stupid mistakes going public into the logs or the official
Exactly.
official registries for images and stuff like this. And yeah, that might be a great idea. But I guess the limiting factor here will be the resources. So for now, for end-to-end testing environment, it's I guess 8 cores and 32 gigs of RAM, which is hefty for the dev environment to be run on a laptop.
I agree. We have to be very careful. I mean, there's cautionary tales with the ONAP project that some of you know, which I mean, just to set up ONAP is you need a machine with, I think, 256 gigabytes of RAM, and an insane. It's not even easy to get a virtual machine in a cloud to be able to just run it, to just do a hello world. So I think we also have to think about optimization. People have also mentioned that it can take half an hour more to set up the environment. That's also way too much, right? So we need to look at that, and because when you get to the bottom of things, Nefio is not that much code. It's a lot of these small Go executables. Kind is very lightweight as well.
But installing all this, installing all this, the Kubernetes, MetalLB, all this stuff around it, it takes time, even if it's automated with Ansible and so on.
Yeah, I'm worried about that too, because I think we're putting too much into the initial dev environment. I think depending on what you're working on, you might want to add these things, but I think for people starting, it should be something much simpler than it is right now. But yeah, it's a big topic, right? But
no, yeah, definitely. And speaking of ONAP, the computer I've got here under my desk with 192 gigs of RAM was bought specifically to do some stuff for ONAP.
Same with me. I have such a workstation. It's what I'm using right now, actually. But yeah, it's an insane monster of a creature, and I used it also to sometimes even run OpenStack, right? So OpenStack has the same issue, that OpenStack is a really simple project. It's a bunch of Python code that really doesn't need too much to run. but it ends up that almost any OpenStack distribution is immensely heavy just because all these systems, etc. So few people run OpenStack at home. I do. It's very challenging to get it set up, right? I don't want Nefio to become something like that. I think from the very start, we were using terms like lean and mean to describe Nefio and to be very straightforward. If it starts getting into becoming a kind of huge distribution, I think we're kind of losing our initial goal.
Yeah, we had used to have DevStack for OpenStack basically, and OpenStack. I mean, I've installed OpenStack and I've installed I think you guys were talking about own app. I remember the 192. This was in 2018 when we were trying to like install it. The Amsterdam release, right? That was the first one.
Yeah.
It had like huge. You could only do it in a bare metal, and then of course, between own app and OpenStack, I think OpenStack is a little more simpler, maybe. And I don't think Nefio is probably as complex as these two. Is what I'm thinking, right? Because it's a management controller. It runs on an existing. You can still run this on an existing Kubernetes install, right? If you already have Kubernetes installed somewhere, either on OpenShift or on GCP somewhere, you could probably do that. And I agree with you guys. We don't want it to become like any of these two as complex.
The thing with the thing with Nefio, I mean, Nefio is you can install it in virtual machine with two virtual CPUs and low memory. You have like too much footprint. The major problem is like the additional components that you have to add, like for example, cluster API, Metal LLD,
Exactly.
Search Manager, all of those additional things that you needed for running the end-to-end is what causes the extra cost. So,
yeah, and honestly, this is part of what Nefio is supposed to do, right? Because the idea is that infrastructure requirements should be part of the network function. So if you're deploying a certain use case, a free 5GC based topology, right? And let's say it requires MetaLLB, then Nefio should be part of provisioning that MetaLLB, right? But we're not working that way right now. We're setting up our complete distribution and assuming that it's fine and then putting the workloads on top, right? So that initial distribution is very complicated. By the way, it's also worth looking at our sister project, Anuket in LFN, which is trying to solve that goal, right, from a different perspective. The idea of Anuket is to create a Kubernetes distribution that includes everything you need for deploying network functions, right? So, yeah, but we think differently, right? We don't think that approach is the best. Right, having one distribution as a target. The whole idea for us is to be multi-vendor and multi-cloud, right? And multi-cloud assumes, if you're working with Red Hat, if you're working with other things, MetaLLB might not be available in some cases, right? So it should not be a requirement for us.
Correct. It's only for sandbox currently.
Exactly, it's for a testing environment, right? Yeah. But I think even with that, it's grown too much. I know we're Wim recently dealing with multi-cluster communication. So we've also had an opinion about that. I forget which was chosen. I think Submariner or Scupper, or maybe even something else.
Yeah, I think that was postponed. I think for the next one.
Yeah. So suddenly this becomes a requirement too, right? So we keep growing our base distribution, which I think we have to be very careful with.
Correct. You're right. Our core should be very minimal. And then what do you choose when you use either OpenShift or GKE or AWS? It should be different. Yeah.
We are over time.
At time.
Yeah. If there are no questions, probably we can end the call.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.